Truth, happiness versus success.
真相，幸福 vs 成功。
Happiness is being satisfied with what you have. Success comes from dissatisfaction. Is success worth it then?
幸福意味着满足于你所拥有的一切，而成功却源自不满足。那么，成功真的值得追求吗？
Oof, I'm not sure that statement is true anymore. I made that statement a long time ago, and a lot of these things are just notes to myself and they are highly contextual. They come in the moment, they leave in the moment.
哎呀，我现在也不确定这句话是否还成立了。我很久以前说过类似的话，但这些话其实是当时自己的感悟，都是高度情境化的，有时随境而生，有时随境而灭。
Happiness is a very complicated topic, but I always like the Socrates story where he goes into the marketplace and they show him all these luxuries and fineries, and he says, "How many things there are in this world that I do not want." And that's a form of freedom, so not wanting something is as good as having it.
幸福是个非常复杂的话题，但我一直很喜欢苏格拉底的一个故事。他走进集市，人们给他展示各种奢侈华美之物，苏格拉底却说，原来这个世界上竟然有这么多我并不需要的东西，不去想要某种东西，本身就等同于拥有它，这其实就是一种自由。
In the old story with Alexander and Diogenes, Alexander goes out and conquers the world and he meets Diogenes who's living in a barrel. Diogenes says, "Get out of the way. You're blocking my sun." And Alexander says, "Oh, how I wish I could be like Diogenes in the next life." And Diogenes says, "I don't wish to be Alexander."
另一个故事则是关于亚历山大大帝与蒂欧根尼的。亚历山大征服了世界后，遇见了住在木桶里的蒂欧根尼。蒂欧根尼对他说：“让开点，你挡住我的阳光了。”亚历山大说：“我真希望下辈子能像你一样洒脱自在。”蒂欧根尼却回应道：“我可从未想过要做亚历山大。”
So there are two paths to happiness. One path is success, where you get what you want and satisfy your material needs. The other is like Diogenes, where you just don't want it in the first place. I'm not sure which one is more valid, and it also depends what you define as success. If the end goal is happiness, then why not cut to the chase and just go straight for it?
所以说，实现幸福有两条路径，一条是通过成功得到自己渴望的东西，从而满足物质需求；另一条则像蒂欧根尼那样。从根本上就不想要那些东西。至于哪一种更有效，我自己也没答案。毕竟取决于你怎么定义成功。如果我们追求的终极目标就是幸福，那为什么不跳过中间步骤，直接奔向幸福呢？
Ruth, does happiness hinder success?
真相，幸福会妨碍成功吗？
Does being happy make you less successful? That is conventional wisdom. That may even be the practical earned experience of your reality. You find that when you're happy you don't want anything, so you don't get up and do anything.
当你感到幸福，会不会因此而变得不那么成功？传统的智慧，甚至是你的亲身经验，也许都会告诉你，当你过得很幸福时，你就不会想要更多，于是也失去了行动的动力。
On the other hand, you still got to do something. You're an animal. You're here to survive. You're here to replicate. You're driven. You're motivated. You're going to do something. You're not just going to sit there all day. Some people do. Maybe it's in their nature. But I think most people still want to act. They want to live in the arena.
但从另一方面看，人终究得做点什么。你是个动物，你活着就要生存、繁衍，有内驱力，有原始的动机，总归会行动起来，而不会整天无所事事地坐着。当然也有人这样活着，也许那就是他们的天性。但我相信，大多数人还是渴望去行动，渴望进入人生的竞技场。
I found for myself as I've become happier. That's a big word. But you know, more peaceful, more calm, more present, more satisfied with what I have. I still want to do things. I just want to do bigger things. I want to do things that are more pure. More aligned with what I think needs to be done and what I can uniquely do. So in that sense I think that being happier can actually make you more successful. But your definition of success will likely change along the way.
对我自己而言，随着我越来越幸福，虽然幸福这个词有些宏大， 但可以说是更平和、更平静、更关注当下、更满足于已有的一切。我依旧渴望有所作为，而且想做更大的事情。我渴望做那些更纯粹的、更贴近于我认为值得去做，也只有我能做好的事情。因此，从这个意义上来说，我认为更幸福反而可能会让你更成功。只不过在此过程中，你对成功的定义很可能会发生变化。
Is that a realization you think you could have gotten to had you not had some success in the first place?
你认为，如果你一开始并没有取得一定的成功，你还会有这样的感悟吗？
At least for me, I always wanted to take the path of material success first. I was not going to go be an ascetic and sit there and renounce everything. That just seems too unrealistic and too painful.
至少对我来说，我始终想先走物质成功的道路。我并不打算成为一个苦行僧，放弃一切去过清贫的生活。那对我来说过于不切实际，也太痛苦。
In the story of Buddha, he starts out as a prince and then he sees that it's all kind of meaningless because you're still going to get old and die. And then he goes into the woods looking for something more. I'll take the happy route that involves material success. Thank you.
就像佛陀的故事一样，他起初是个王子，但很快他意识到，一切物质享乐最终毫无意义，因为人终究难逃衰老与死亡。于是他离开了宫殿，踏上了追寻内心真谛的旅程。但如果是我宁可选择一条兼具物质成功与幸福的路，谢谢，不必过于清苦。
Ruth, the path to freedom.
真相，通往自由之路。
I think it's quicker in some ways. One of your insights is it's far easier to achieve our material desires than it is to renounce them.
在某种意义上，这条路可能更快捷一些。你曾经说过，实现物质欲望远比放弃它们要容易得多。
It depends on the person, but I think you have to try that path. If you want something, go get it. I quipped that the reason to win the game is to be free of it. So you play the games. You win the games, and then hopefully you get bored of the games.
这要看具体是谁，但我认为人们的确应该先试着走一走实现欲望这条路。如果你渴望某样东西，那就放手去追。我曾经开玩笑地说，你赢得一场游戏的真正意义，是为了从此摆脱这场游戏。你参与游戏，赢下游戏，然后你希望自己对这游戏感到厌倦。
You don't want to just keep looping on the same game over and over. Although a lot of these games are very enticing and have many levels that are relatively open-ended, then you become free of the game, in the sense that you're no longer trying to win it. You know you can win it, and either you move to a different game or you play the game for the sheer joy of it.
你总不可能一直在同一个游戏里无限循环下去，尽管许多游戏很诱人，而且层次丰富，结局开放，最终你会从游戏中解脱出来，不再执着于非要赢得胜利，因为你知道自己随时可以赢。到那个时候，要么你换一个新游戏，要么你继续玩这个游戏，但只是为了纯粹的乐趣。
Ruth, suffering and progress.
真相，痛苦与进步。
Another one of yours. Most of the gains in life come from suffering in the short term so you can get paid in the long term. That's classic, winning the marshmallow test on a daily basis. But there's an interesting challenge where I think people need to avoid becoming a suffering addict, sort of using suffering as the proxy for progress as opposed to the outcome of the suffering, right?
你曾经提过一个观点，生命中大部分的收获都源于短期内忍受痛苦，以换取长期的回报。这是经典的棉花糖实验，每天都要面对这样的考验。但这里面存在一个有趣的挑战，那就是我们要避免成为痛苦的瘾君子。也就是说，把痛苦本身当作进步的标志，而不是痛苦之后真正获得的结果，对吧？
It's like, I was in pain not eating the marshmallow. I was in pain doing this work. I have attached well-being and satisfaction to pain, not to what the pain gets me on the other side of it.
是的，人们可能会认为，我忍着不吃棉花糖很痛苦，我做这件工作很痛苦，于是就把幸福感与满足感和痛苦本身联系在一起，而不是和痛苦背后的收获相联系。
If you define pain as physical pain, then it's a real thing, it happens, and you can't ignore it. But that's not what we mean by suffering. Suffering is mostly mental anguish and mental pain, and it just means you don't want to do the task at hand.
如果你把痛苦定义为身体上的疼痛，那它确实是真实存在的，你无法忽视它。但我们所说的痛苦，大多指的是心理上的煎熬和折磨，根本原因在于你并不想做眼前的任务。
If you are fine doing the task at hand, then you wouldn't be suffering. And then the question is, what's more effective, to suffer along the way or just to interpret it in a way that it's not suffering? You hear from a lot of successful people, they look back and they say, oh, the journey was the fun part. That was actually the entertaining part, and I should have enjoyed it more. It's a common regret.
如果你真的接受了眼前这件任务，那么其实你根本不会感觉到所谓的痛苦。这时候真正的问题就变成，哪种做法更有效？是一路忍受痛苦，还是干脆换个角度看待这件事，让自己不再感到痛苦？你经常会听到很多成功人士回过头来看时会说，其实旅途本身才是最有趣的部分，真正值得享受的就在过程里。我当时应该更好地享受它。这种遗憾非常常见。
Ruth, learning from your past self.
真相，向过去的自己学习。
There's a little thought exercise I like to do, which is, you can go back into your own life and try to put yourself in the exact position you were in 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. You try to remember who you were with, what you were doing, what you were feeling, what were your emotions, what were your objectives, and really try to transport yourself back and see if there's any advice you'd give yourself, anything you'd do differently.
我经常做一个小小的思想练习，就是回到过去，设想自己置身于5年前、10年前、15年前，甚至20年前的某个时刻。你努力回忆当时的自己正和谁在一起，正在做什么，心里是什么感受，有什么样的情绪，怀抱怎样的目标。你真正的将自己带回那个时刻，试着去看看你能给当时的自己什么样的建议，有哪些是你会想换个方式去做。
Now you don't have new information. Don't pretend you could have gone back and bought a stock or bought Bitcoin or whatever, but just knowing what you know now in terms of your temperament and a little bit of age-related experience, how would you have done things differently?
注意，这里你并不会有任何新的外部信息，不要假装自己能回去买股票或者比特币，但仅仅凭借现在你对自己性格的了解以及多年积累下来的经验，回头看看有什么事情你本可以换一种方式去做。
I think it's a worthwhile exercise to do. For me, I would have done everything the same, except I would have done it with less anger, less emotion, less internal suffering, because that was optional. It wasn't necessary.
我觉得这是个很有价值的练习。对我来说，我可能依然会做完全一样的选择，但会少一些愤怒，少一些情绪的波动，少一些内心的折磨，因为这些负面情绪完全是可以选择避免的，它们并非必须。
And I would argue that someone who can do the job at least peacefully, but maybe happily, is going to be more effective than someone who has unnecessary emotional turmoil.
而且我认为，一个能够以平静甚至愉快心情做事的人，肯定会比一个整天处于情绪风暴中的人更有效率。
Well, you end up with a series of miserable successes, right? The outcome may have been the same, but the entire experience of getting there.
是啊，否则到头来，你得到的不过是一连串令人痛苦的成功，最终的结果也许没什么不同，但整个实现目标的过程却完全不同。
Ruth, the journey is all there is.
真相，旅程本身就是一切。
And the journey is not only the reward, the journey is the only thing there is. Even success. It's human nature to bank it very quickly, right? Because the normal loop that we run through is you sit around, you're bored, then you want something. Then when you want something you decide you're not going to be happy until you get that thing. Then you start your bout of suffering or anticipation while you strive to get that thing.
事实上，旅程不仅仅是最终的奖赏，旅程本身就是我们生命中唯一真实存在的东西。即便获得了成功，人类的天性也是很快就会习以为常。我们通常经历的模式是这样的：一开始你无所事事，感到无聊，然后你开始渴望某样东西，接下来你决定，除非得到这件东西，否则你不会感到满足。于是你便开始了一段为了达成目标而经历的痛苦或期待。
If you get that thing, then you get used to it, and then you get bored again. then a few months later you want something else, and if you don't get it then you're unhappy for a bit, and then you get over it then you want something else. That's the normal cycle, so whether you're happy or unhappy at the end, it tends not to last.
但当你真的得到了，你很快就会习惯它，接着又会再次陷入无聊状态。几个月之后，你又开始渴望其他东西。如果这次你没得到，你就短暂的不开心一阵子，然后又会逐渐忘掉，再次进入下一轮欲望循环。这种模式不断重复下去，不管最终你是开心还是不开心，这种情绪都不会持久。
Now I don't want to be glib and say that there's no point in making money or being successful. There absolutely is. Money solves all your money problems, so it is good to have money.
当然，我不想随意地说赚钱或追求成功毫无意义。赚钱绝对是有意义的，因为金钱能解决所有关于金钱的问题。能解决问题就是一件好事。
That said, there are those stories. I don't know if you've seen those studies. I don't know how real these are. A lot of these psych studies don't replicate. But it's a fun little study that shows that people who break their back and people who win the lottery are back to their baseline happiness 2 years later.
话虽如此，你可能听过一些类似的心理学研究，当然，我也不知道这些研究多可靠，毕竟许多心理研究后来都无法被重复验证。但确实有一个有趣的小研究表明，那些严重受伤导致瘫痪的人，以及那些彩票中奖的幸运儿，2年后他们的幸福感都会回到最初的水平。
Yep.
没错。
Again, don't know if that's entirely true. I think money can buy you happiness if you earned it. Because then along the way you have both pride and confidence in yourself. And you have a sense of accomplishment. And you set out to do something and you were right. So I'll bet that lingers. And then as I said, it solves your money problems.
当然，我不确定这种说法是否完全准确。我觉得，如果你通过自己的努力赚到了钱，那么金钱或许确实能够带给你幸福感，因为在追求目标的过程中，你建立了自信，积累了成就感，最终证明了自己当初的判断是正确的。这些内心的收获是会持续的，更不用说，钱还能解决实际问题。
So I don't want to be too glib about it, but I would say in general, this loop that we run through of desire, dopamine, fulfillment, unfulfillment, you have to enjoy the journey. The journey is all there is. 99% of your time is spent on the journey. So what kind of a journey is it if you're not going to enjoy it?
所以我不想对金钱的价值过于轻描淡写，但总体而言，这种欲望、期待、满足、空虚的无限循环告诉我们，你必须学会享受过程本身。因为过程才是生命的全部，你99%的时间都花在了过程里。如果你不去享受它，这样的旅程又有什么意义呢？
Ruth, managing desires.
真相，管理欲望。
How do you shortcut that desire contract?
怎样才能缩短这种欲望的循环？
You could focus, you could decide that I don't want most things. I think we have a lot of unnecessary desires that we just pick up everywhere, have opinions on everything, judgments on everything, so I think just knowing that those are the source of unhappiness will make you be choosy about your desires.
你可以专注于真正想要的，主动选择放弃绝大部分的欲望。我认为我们之所以不快乐，很多时候源自那些无处不在、不必要的欲望，比如我们到处收集的观点和随意做出的评价。如果你意识到这些多余的欲望正是你不幸福的根源，你自然会更加谨慎地选择自己的欲望。
And frankly, if you want to be successful, you have to be choosy about your desires. You have to focus. You can't be great at everything. You're just going to waste your energy and waste your time.
坦白地讲，如果你真的想获得成功，就必须在欲望方面精挑细选，并保持专注。你不可能在所有领域都卓越。如果你想样样都好，只会白白浪费你的精力和时间。
Ruth, is fame worth it?
真相，名声是一个值得追求的目标吗？
It gets you invited to better parties. It gets you to better restaurants. Fame is this funny thing where a lot of people know you, but you don't know them, and it does get you put on a pedestal. It can get you what you want at distance, so I wouldn't say it's worthless. Obviously people want it for a reason, It's high status, so it attracts the opposite sex, especially for men it attracts women.
名声能让你获得更好的聚会邀请，去更好的餐厅。名声的奇妙之处在于，很多人知道你，但你并不认识他们。它确实会把你推上一个特殊的位置，它能让你更容易获得远处的东西。所以我不会说名声毫无价值。很显然，人们追逐名声是有原因的，它是一种很高的社会地位，能吸引异性，尤其对男性来说，更容易吸引女性。
That said, it is high cost. It means you have no privacy, you do have weirdos and lunatics, you do get hit up a lot for weird things, and you're on a stage, so you're forced to perform. You're forced to be consistent with your past proclamations and actions, and you're going to have haters and all that nonsense.
话虽如此，名声也伴随着很高的代价，它意味着你几乎没有隐私，你会遇到奇怪的人，疯狂的粉丝，会接收到各种奇怪的请求，你始终站在舞台上，被迫不断的表演，你过去说过的话、做过的事，会变成一种束缚，你必须保持一致。与此同时，你也会收获很多嫉妒、攻击和无休止的麻烦。
But the fact that we do it, the fact that we all seem to want it, means that it would be disingenuous to say, oh no, no, I'm famous. But you don't want to be. That said, I think fame, like anything else, is best produced as a byproduct of something potentially more worthwhile. Wanting to be famous and craving to be famous and being famous for being famous, these are sort of traps.
但事实上，我们都仍然在追求它。这本身就意味着，如果我对你说，哦不，我虽然出名了，但你千万不要这样做。这种说法是虚伪的。但我要说的是，名声与其他事情一样，最好是作为你做更有价值的事情后的副产品而产生。如果你只是单纯的渴望名声，或者仅仅是因为出名而出名，这其实是一种陷阱，
Fame bait.
一种名声的诱饵。
Yeah, exactly. So it's better that it's earned fame. For example, earn respect in the tribe by doing things that are good for the tribe. Who are the most famous people in human history? They are people who sort of transcended the self, the Buddhas and the Jesuses and the Muhammads of the world.
没错，所以最好的名声是你真正赚来的名声。比如，你为部落做了贡献，为大家谋取利益，从而获得了人们的尊重。人类历史上最著名的人物是谁？是那些超越了自我的人，佛陀、耶稣、穆罕默德。他们为了人类整体的福祉而行动。
Who else is famous? The artists are famous. Art lasts for a long time. The scientists are famous, they discover a thing. The conquerors are famous, presumably because they conquered for their tribe, was someone that they were fighting for.
还有谁著名呢？艺术家是著名的，因为艺术作品能够长久流传。科学家是著名的，因为他们做出了重大发现。征服者也是著名的，虽然他们的行动可能是暴力的、负面的，但至少在他们的群体看来，他们是为自己人而战。
So generally the higher up you rise by doing things for greater and greater groups of people, even though it may be considered tyrannical or negative, like Genghis Khan is famous. But to the Mongols he was doing good, to the rest of them not so much. The higher level you're operating at, the more people you're taking care of, the more you sort of earn respect and fame. And I think those are good reasons to be famous.
比如成吉思汗对于蒙古人来说是伟大的英雄，对于其他民族则并非如此。你为更广泛的群体谋利益，照顾更多的人，就更容易获得真正的尊重和名声。我认为这样的名声才值得去追求。
If fame is empty, if you're famous just because your name showed up in a lot of places or your face showed up in a lot of places, then that's a hollow fame, and I think deep down you will know that, and so it'll be fragile, and you'll always be afraid of losing it, and then you'll be forced to perform.
如果你的名声毫无内涵，只是因为你的名字或脸庞频繁出现而出名，这种名声将是空洞的。我相信你内心也会明白这一点，因此这种名声非常脆弱，你会一直害怕失去它。也会因此不得不不停地表演。
So the kind of fame that pure actors and celebrities have, I wouldn't want, but the kind of fame that's earned because you did something useful, why dodge that?
因此，我并不想要那种纯粹靠曝光度而获得的演员或明星式的名声。但如果是通过做一些有价值的事情获得的名声，那又何必刻意回避呢？
Truth, changing your mind.
真相，改变自己的想法。
No, you can't. There's a challenge, I think, especially if people make very loud public proclamations about things you mentioned thereabout. You're almost a hostage to the things that you used to say. Being able to update your opinions and change your mind looks very similar to the internet as hypocrisy does. The difference between me saying something in the past and saying something different now is perhaps I've learned, perhaps I've updated my beliefs.
确实，尤其是当一个人曾经非常高调地公开表达过某种观点时，这种挑战就变得特别明显。正如你刚刚所说的，你过去的言论反而变成了对你现在的束缚。在互联网上，能更新观点并改变想法，看起来和虚伪几乎没什么差别。但过去的我与现在的我之所以表达了不同观点，可能只是因为我成长了，更新了自己的信念。
Right, but so few people do it in a legitimate way. I think that the grifter shill, you'd see this is the smoking gun that shows that he didn't really believe that thing all along.
没错，但真正以真诚的态度去更新观点的人实在太少了，大部分人都是投机取巧，这就让人抓住把柄。看吧，这就是证据，他从来不真正相信他说的话。
I went to a retreat in La a couple of years ago, and there was a guy that I used to follow, a big business and productivity advice content creator, really successful, and he just totally stepped back from everything, went monk mode and focused on his business.
几年前我在洛杉矶参加过一次进修会，当时遇到了一个我以前经常关注的人，他是个非常成功的商业和效率领域的内容创作者，但后来他完全从公众视野消失了，进入了类似僧侣模式，只专注于他自己的事业。
Truth, living authentically.
真相，活得真实。
I asked him why, and he said, I started feeling like I had to live up to in private the things that I was saying in public.
我问他为什么会做这样的转变，他回答：我开始发现自己在私下必须活成我公开宣扬的那个样子。
Right, it's what Emerson said. Foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. But essentially, look, all learning is error correction. Every knowledge creation system works through making guesses and correcting errors. So by definition, if you're learning, you're going to be wrong most of the time and you'll be updating your priors.
没错，正如爱默生所言，愚蠢的一致性是小人物才会纠结的烦恼。但本质上来说，所有的学习过程都是一个不断纠错的过程。任何知识创造的系统都是通过尝试和修正错误来进步的。所以，从定义上讲，如果你在学习，那么大部分时候你必然是错的，也必然在不断更新你的认知。
For example, I did this Joe Rogan podcast, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, and people will call out like the one thing that didn't turn out to be correct. They just beat on it because it helps them in their mind raise their status a little bit. I caught him in an error.
举个例子吧，大约8、9年前我上了乔罗根的播客，直到今天还有人会专门指出我当时讲错的一件事情，他们不断强调这一点，因为这样会让他们自己感觉地位稍微提升了一些。看吧，我抓到了他的错误。
If you catch someone in a blatant lie where they believe one thing and say another, that's legit, that's a character flaw. They shouldn't be lying. But on the other hand, if they just made a guess at something and got it wrong, that's different. Mostly it's about the AI agi thing, and I think I'm still right about that. But it's a different story.
如果你抓住一个人明显的谎言，他说的与自己真正相信的完全不符，这确实是性格缺陷。他们不应该撒谎。但另一方面，如果只是某个判断错误，那性质就完全不同了。比如很多人纠结于我关于人工智能 AI 的预测，但其实我觉得我仍然是对的。不过这是另外一个话题了。
People who think we have achieved agi just fail a Turing test from their side. It's funny how people latch onto single proclamations, but the reality is all of us are dynamical systems. We're always changing, always learning, always growing, and hopefully we're correcting errors. But what you don't want to be doing is lying in public because you're trying to look good. I think people can smell that.
那些认为我们已经实现 edgy 的人，其实是自己没能通过图灵测试。有趣的是，人们总爱抓住某个单一的论断不放，而事实上，我们每个人都是动态发展的系统，一直在改变、学习、成长，并希望不断地修正过去的错误。但你绝对不应该做的，就是为了在公开场合显得好看而说谎。我认为大家都能感受到这种虚伪。
What this world really lacks right now is authenticity. Because everybody wants something. They want to be seen as something. They want to be something that they are not. So you catch a lot of people saying things that they don't really believe. And I think people are very sensitive to that. Bullshit radars have become hypersensitized to try and work out whether or not this person means the thing that they're saying.
当下的世界真正缺少的东西，恰恰就是真实，因为每个人都渴望着某种东西，渴望被看成某种人，渴望成为他们并非真实的那个人。于是你看到很多人说着他们并不真正相信的话。我觉得人们对于这一点特别敏感。现在大家的虚假探测雷达都高度敏锐，总在试图辨别说话的人是不是真心的。
Most of us are wrong most of the time, especially in any new endeavor. There's a difference between being wrong and disingenuous though.
我们大多数人在大部分时候都是错的，尤其是在面对任何新领域的时候，但错和不真诚之间还是存在区别的。
Correct. Purposely wrong. Exactly.
没错，刻意为之的错误才是真正的问题。
I think that's the big difference. If someone is wrong, no big deal, as long as they have a genuine reason for saying what they're saying or believing what they're believing. But if they are lying to elevate their status or their appearance or to live up to some expectation, that's the mistake. And that's a mistake not just for the listener, but a mistake for themselves. Because then you're going to get trapped in the hall of mirrors. You yourself are going to be consistent with your past proclamation, so if you're lying to others, you're going to be lying to yourself.
我认为这才是最关键的区别。如果有人做错了事情，这本身没什么大不了，只要他有真实的理由去相信或去说那些话。但如果有人在撒谎，只是为了抬高自己的地位、外表或符合别人的期望，那就是个错误了。而且这种错误不仅仅欺骗了听众，更欺骗了他们自己，因为他们会被困在自己制造的静听中，他们会为了与过去说过的话保持一致，而不得不继续欺骗自己。
You're puppeted by a person that you are not even.
你变成了一个连你自己都不是的傀儡。
That's right. It's like, what was the line? You're basically trying to impress people who don't care about you. And they don't like the real you. And if they saw the real you, they wouldn't care. And the people who would like the real you don't get to see the real you, so they pass you by.
对，就像有句经典的话所描述的那样，你费尽心思讨好那些根本不在意你的人，那些人并不喜欢真实的你，一旦他们看到了真实的你，也并不会在乎。而那些真正会喜欢真实的你的人，却因为你一直戴着面具，从未见到真正的你，与你擦肩而过。
You only want the respect of the very, very few people that you respect. Trying to demand respect from the masses is a fool's errand.
你真正需要的，只是你自己真正尊敬的那极少数人的尊重，而试图从大众那里获取尊重，是一场注定失败的游戏。